I am not the most qualified person here to be creating the Museum of Awe. I'll tell you about that, but it's kind of a funny thing. I was chatting with somebody over here, is that my friend and I were approached by another friend, and he said, you should make a Museum of Awe. And we didn't know what to make out of that, right? So it wasn't even really our idea. But trying to make sense out of it became sort of a real journey for us, just thinking through it all. And I'll get to that, but I just wanted to say that it's really interesting because for a long time we've been doing research, reading papers. A lot of you wrote here, trying to understand what awe is and what that emotion is about. And we sort of felt like we were like alone in the world thinking about this, and scattered around the world were other few people thinking about it. But now I came in here and I feel like, you guys are my people, like we're all here, and this is not all of us either, and so it's really cool. All the speakers who've been up before me, I've just been listening and nodding my head, going, yes, 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 because I really think it's something that we all need, right? It's an emotion that sort of makes us more human in a way that we've lost somehow. And I stumbled across this quote just on the internet just the other day, and I love it, right? The universe is full of magical things patiently waiting for our wits to grow sharper. I just love that, because they're there, but somehow we've become blind to them, And that happens to us on a personal level, and it happens to us on a big level, on a big scientific growth level. And so I just wanted to kind of explore this idea with you through some of the work that I do with my colleagues at JPL and get into this idea of the Museum of Awe. So I come from a place we call the Studio. It's a really small group of us. There's 7 of us at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is part of Caltech, but we're a research and development facility for NASA. So they're the folks who landed the rovers on Mars with the Cassini mission, which soon will, end its mission and come very, very close to the rings, to finding exoplanets, to working to land on comets. And so it's really the people that are helping us understand what's out there beyond Earth. And what we want to do is try to talk about those ideas in a way that get people to ask questions and to be curious and to want to know more about it. And I try to simplify things all the time, and so I basically simplified it to, we ask people to be curious about what is, but what could be, right? Because it's within the could be that there is curiosity and the desire to find out more. And just wanted to share with you a little project that we've been very focused on for the past 3 months. Our director, Charles Zalachi, is retiring, and he's a beloved figure at JPL. He's been our director for 15 years. He's been there for a very, very long time. He's done a number of really amazing things, but it was time for him to go. And we were honored with the idea of presenting a gift to him. And so they asked us to come up with some ideas. And being from Lebanon, it struck us that when you look at the flag, there's a tree on that flag. And I didn't know what that tree was. And the tree is the Cedar of Lebanon. And the Cedar of Lebanon is a really interesting tree, has this really long, rich history that goes back thousands of years, because 2,000 years ago or more, it was the best construction material of its day, right? Like the Temple of Solomon was built from the cedars of Lebanon. Pharaohs, it was literally the tree of kings and pharaohs. Pharaohs would use it sapped in the process of mummification. And so we were thinking, wow, well, that's pretty special. It sort of developed this symbolism of, of wisdom and of endurance. And well, that's great, so let's get a Cedar of Lebanon. And we went on a national search, actually. It was really hard to find. I started by calling our local nursery, and I just couldn't believe that they didn't have one. And then it was like jumping down the rabbit hole. And we found 3 in the country. 2 were in Oregon, and 1 was in Pennsylvania. And so this is the one we got. It's a baby. We just planted it last week. It's 14 years old, and it's 30 feet tall. And then going through that process, with all of that history and symbolism, the most meaningful part to us became the fact that this is a tree with great potential within its species, right? So it's strong, it's great building material, but also can grow for up to 2,000 years. And if you look at some of these, an illustration of the great cedars of Lebanon from long, long ago, some of these trees are still standing that are over 2,000 years old. And that became a story that we thought was special because our species has great potential, right? What will we become? And that became a story that we found meaningful, you know? This is an awkward teenager, right? Much like we all have and have around us, and much like we are still, really. What will we become when we grow as a species, when we grow as ourselves throughout our life? What will we become? And it's our job to nurture that, right? And so what we ended up doing was we wanted people to think of this as the current tree, but also think of the future tree and imagine. And so what we developed was a ring to, it was a plaque. That's what we sold it as a plaque. But this plaque is to honor Dr. Alachi, of course, but it's also to map out the future diameter of how big that tree can grow. So right now, in 2016, it has an 8-inch diameter trunk. In 4016, this trunk can grow 9 feet wide, right? And what are we going to be like at that time? Will we be around? Do we have the endurance and the wherewithal to do that? And so it's sort of a challenge that we put out there for people, just to think about that kind of thing. This is a slide that I stole from my friend Michelle Fowler. She's a scientist at NASA, and I just love it. And I immediately fell in love with this chart when she was talking about all of the matter that exists in the universe, right? And what does that consist of? And I just thought it was so funny that it was put into this simple pie chart. But when you look at this, it's really crazy. So here we have 73% dark matter, 23% dark matter, 73% dark energy, 3.6% intergalactic gas, and then 0.4% of all of that, and I love how she wrote it, is stars, comma, etc. Can you believe that? Stars, comma, etc. So basically everything that you have seen ever about, for the most part, our universe is that tiny 0.4%, right? And I've noticed that when I've talked about this, and some people have seen it, there's two ways to look at this. And one of the ways is, wow, we don't know anything, and it's sort of depressing, right? Well, we don't have the capability to know. And the other way is going back to sort of the quote that I mentioned in the beginning is, what if I told you that the dark part, right? So the dark, people say dark energy, dark matter. It's because we don't really know. We don't really know what that is yet, right? It's what dark. The chances of that becoming more defined are great, right? But what if I told you that that was filled with magical things? Then it becomes a lot more interesting, right? It's like, look at the amazing opportunity we have for discovery. And that's the kind of thing that is just really interesting because in it, part of the reason why I thought this was such an interesting quote is because magical things, what is that, And imagine how useful is this quote and how interesting is it if you take out the word magical? The universe is full of things patiently waiting for our wits to grow sharper. I mean, you just end it now, right? It's like, why would you? I do not want to wait for that, right? And so the magical thing, the magic part about it, it's kind of a funny word, but the funny is like, people don't just want to know, people want meaning in their lives. People want to have a sense of purpose, right? A sense of context that they're here for a reason, they're doing something, but when they learn something, that information is meaningful, right? Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. You need to make sense of things. And so that's where the magic is, And when you find out things that sort of you can't quite grasp yet, and it's big, you get this special human feeling, right? This awe. And that's something that we were born with this amazing, it's in our species. We have that talent. We have that capacity, And just like the tree, it's like we have we inherited something very special, right? And it's being lost. It's not being paid attention to somehow. So can we pull the veil back for people just so they get little tastes of, or little ways to connect again to some of those more sort of meaningful things about what actually exists, what's really true, what's really out there, what is. This is one of the things that is very special. This is a comet. And this is an image of Halleys Comet. And it's a beautiful, strange, mysterious thing, right? Something that scientists are still trying to figure out. What are these things made out of? Why do they have tails? How can they live for so long? The scientific idea is that these things, comets, are composed of sort of the leftovers of the beginning of our solar system, right? And then after everything formed, this stuff was left over, and it just formed into this icy rock. And whenever these things come close to the sun, they heat up and release this beautiful comet tail. And so the Rosetta mission 2 years ago landed on a comet, European Space Agency mission. NASA had 3 instruments on it. And so they asked us to do something to get people to think about comets. And rather than focus on the details of it, we wanted just to get people to think about the big picture, right? Just to think about, like, to capture that early just wonder of that all the scientists have is, what are these things, you know? And so this is what we did. It's a sculpture of a comet that allowed people to walk inside a comet tail, just to create an experience that get them to ask questions. And we filled this with lights, and we put this comet sculpture inside a tail structure that became a reflection pool. And so everything conceptually became about water. Comets are thought to have brought water to Earth, and now our part, scientists think that it was probably more than that, but asteroids and many other things brought water to Earth. But this sort of drove the sort of conceptual process at the time. And what we really wanted to do is have people look at that and not give them all the answers, but give them questions. Because, and I've heard that earlier, is that questions are more important than answers, right? And when we saw these children playing around it, and when we saw this girl do this, I'm telling you, it's just like, yes, that is what we wanted. Because we want them to leave thinking about that experience. Of course, it doesn't hurt when people were coming up, taking pictures for their wedding, free-form dancing. It was really a lot of fun. Another project is a project that we did just to get people to use their senses in a different way that they're not used to. NASA has 19 Earth science satellites. Most people think of NASA as International Space Station and Mars. Well, they have these satellites that are swirling around Earth all the time, right? And they're reading many, many different types of things about Earth. They're helping us understand Earth better. We really don't have a very clear idea of the details of how our planet works, and so we should try to figure that out. But we wanted to let people know that those things are up there. So we thought, well, what if we made a big dome? And inside that dome were, a whole bunch of speakers, and it became sort of the sound system on steroids. And if we could tie all those speakers to the data of satellites that were flying overhead, maybe we could let people listen to them as they went over. And so we made this. We worked with a couple of amazing people, Jason Klomoski, an architect from Brooklyn, who also designed the shell for the Comet, and Shane Mirbeck, who's here in San Francisco, a sound artist, to create this. And when you walk in, you look up and you see sort of a big oculus that allows you to see the sky. And this is the reaction that we got from a lot of people, because they would go in and just listen. And there was sort of a sense of reverence that came through it, because they got a chance to listen to something that is impossible to hear and impossibly far away, but became as visceral as listening to sort of a bird fly across over the sky above your head. And when those sounds were above your head, that's exactly where that satellite was in the sky above you. I wanted to go back to the idea of the Museum of Awe. I mentioned that our colleague and friend Ivan called my friend Dan. And Dan we're a creative team. He's a really good friend of mine, and we do a lot of work together. We work together at JPL. And he was talking to Ivan, and he came to me and he's like, we got to do the Museum of Awe, right? So back to that story. And I said, well, what is that? What are you talking about? What is the Museum of Awe? And thinking about that, it really kind of stumped us for one. Because one, we were thinking, what is a museum? And the other one is thinking, calling it the Museum of Awe is a really high bar, right? That's like, are you seriously going to do it with every single exhibit, right? Or does it even have exhibit? What is it? And so we were working on a project and thinking this through, and, is it a place? We don't, what is awe? And we came upon a truth that made sense to us, and we thought, well, what about this? What if the Museum of Awe is everywhere, right? What if we were all born into the Museum of Awe? Because we were, right? But we've somehow lost touch, somehow lost like the presence to see the beauty that's in front of us. And then it started to make sense. Well, if that's true, then we could start creating experiences for people that they could interact with, that they could that would pull the veil away from them and just momentarily give them a truth about the world that makes them feel that feeling, right? And that's when I'm talking about the grain of sand. This is just an example of it. Actually, here inside this little vial, really hard to see, right, is a grain of sand. One single grain of sand, right? And this is just an example of sort of what we're talking about. We're all familiar with this grain of sand. So afterwards, I'll show this to all of you, but just for visibility's sake, I will show it to you close up, right? So that's a single grain of sand, and inside that grain of sand is a hole. And so my buddy Dan got somebody at JPL to take a very tiny little drill and drill a hole into the grain of sand. And this is an analogy that you guys can think of. So if that grain of sand represented our whole galaxy, all of the Milky Way, right? If that grain of sand represented just our galaxy alone, it's only within that small little hole that we've found the thousands and thousands of exoplanets, planets around other stars already. And think about it. We're one planet around our star, our sun, with all the other planets in our solar system, and almost every star in the sky that you look at probably has planets swirling around it too. Scientists are starting to discover them at a faster rate than you can ever possibly imagine. 2 weeks ago, there was just an update of an extra 1,000 that went into that catalog, right? And it is astounding how much is out there. Now, to basically sum up all of the other rest of our universe, right, that like pie chart that I was talking about, you would need rooms and rooms filled with sand, billions and billions of grains of sand. And it makes me think, what an opportunity we have. I think what we want to do with the Museum of Awe is we want to create experiences that allow people to leave, but feeling the gift and privilege of being alive. And I think that, and hearing everybody speak today really started to resonate with me, is that that feeling really does give it to us. Like, it's like Vanessa's story, It's like we're here for a very short time, right? We don't know what's going to happen after we go, but we have our life now, and it's a gift, and it's a waste to throw it away. And so what are we going to do to enjoy and to feel the gift of privilege in being alive? And so what we would like to do is to create the Museum of Awe to help people feel that and to help understand that ourselves. And just one last little thing, and I'm going to go very shortly, but this is what you see as a mist of alcohol. This is not vodka alcohol, it's like rubbing alcohol. And you can look up on the internet of how to make a cloud chamber. But if you create a little cloud of sort of rubbing alcohol cloud, you'll start to notice something very strange. You'll start to see these little streaks of light that start shooting across the screen. They just right through there. And what you're seeing actually is it's like a contrail. It's like the evidence of these tiny little particles called muons, which are the remnants of exploded stars that are actually going through this entire room right now. They're invisible in any other way, but when you make this, you can see them. They're passing through all of us, right? And so what we're seeing is the evidence of these exploded stars, billions of years old, that have traveled billions and billions of light years, to get to us. And we are the remnants of those exploded stars also. When that star exploded, it created the majority of our periodic table. It created, and that we created us, and we created this, and so I wanted to say that it's a gift to me to meet all of you. I feel like there's something very, very special here happening with all of the research on awe in all of its different ways. I feel like the world needs it in all of its different ways, and we hope to get the Museum of Awe off the ground sometime soon. Right now we're building it, we're dreaming it, and we'd love your help. So thank you.